and welcome to Tavern Talk. We are a full spoiler live talk show based on the epic fantasy series Wheel of Time by Robert Jordan. Joining me as always is my brother Dan.
Hi.
That's Wayne Sedai and Jansen the Gleeman. This is the Tavern Talk crew coming at you live, full effect. We are broadcasting now in vertical format on YouTube, so if you appreciate that more, go ahead. We have two streams going on at the exact same time, horizontal and vertical. We go both ways. This is the way of the Leaf.
This is the way.
Welcome humans on all the spectrums. We're continuing our Read React series. We're discussing the Wheel of Time and philosophy books. And last week, 2 weeks ago, we had an amazing discussion, and now we're going to be discussing chapter 2. And this is a compendium book of philosophy authors who are discussing the Wheel of Time on their terms. And this chapter is called The Wheel of Time and Authorship, The French Connection. But before we get into that, let me say hi to our co-hosts and see how everyone's doing. Brother Dan, Dad Swain, Gleeman, Jansen, how are we all doing?
We're doing good.
Good, yeah.
Any day you can breathe and talk to people is a good day. And as us actors always say, any day you get a platform to perform in front of anybody is a great day.
Agree.
Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely. My wife is my platform. But
I have a fantastic wife, and she's awesome. I've met her.
yeah, she is.
She's
All
amazing.
Right. That's when anything to announce to our the fine folks watching.
I have a new wig.
It's gorgeous.
Yes.
I'm
Yes,
so
and-
excited.
And a very inappropriate shirt.
Or
Might
is
get us
it,
demonetized?
is it appropriate?
Mhm.
Actually, I'm so excited. So I got this new job. I'm finishing up my training on Wednesday, and I just have really been very humbled and very blessed by the salary, because I guess for the longest time I've just been kind of a poor boy trying real hard to exist
I'm
in
just
this
a
world.
poor boy.
And and like you exist and you survive and you do well for yourself, and then you kind of get a opportunity to do a job like this. And the first thing I was able to do with my first paycheck was go and get my flute cleaned.
Oh,
That's illegal in most states.
I know.
How shiny!
Oh, you went to the
Yeah.
happy ending flute cleaners. Okay.
Absolutely, and she's so happy.
Wow.
But it's like a huge deal for me, because this thing was completely like covered in tarnish, and it was just, the pads were all old and they had to get replaced and stuff. But that costs money for musical instruments. So so I'm just a really happy guy right now that I got my shiny flute back.
Huh.
It's
Dan,
it's really
Dan,
cool when you have like something that is like a sign of neglect, that you're like, I love you and I can't address you yet. And now you're able to, and you're like, fuck, look at my flute. Isn't it awesome?
Yeah, it was amazing.
Maybe if you ever wanted to whip that bad boy out and
Yeah.
give us some tunes, we'd be happy to. Maybe when we're doing like some passage reading, you can like give us some
Some background flute
Mhm.
in the forest.
Wonderful reverb in the forest. Amazing. Well, this chapter, I gotta say, was super fun to read. It kind of touched on a lot of things that we've been doing as a channel, and maybe.
And Ryan, before we jump in, one of the things I want to do with each of these episodes is at least give props to the writer. There is a little blurb on the writer. So this is Roderick Cook, and he teaches French literature and culture at Villanova University. He's writing a book. And it says he discovered the Wheel of Time as an excuse not to revise properly for high school exams in 1990s England, and never imagined that one day he'd get credit from his job for writing about it. So
that's cool.
He focuses on French literature in general. Yeah. So
Good on you, Roderick.
Yeah, and so he comes in and he is talking about the concept of authorship, and he has a historical perspective, a philosophical perspective, and then he talks about the fandom as it currently is. So one of his tenets that he's bringing forward is the idea that all of the historical connection between himself, Tolkien, and then the broader historical connections we talked about last week, including all the Arthurian connections, and he is trying to give it some sort of gravitas. His theory is that Robert Jordan made these decisions almost as a philosophical argument about writing, and that the idea is that he's using the reference of Tolkien as a commentary on writing. And so here's a quote very quickly in this book. He says, Robert Jordan, the American, chose to model his opening volume in part on the Englishman's, being Tolkien, not because he was struggling for inspiration, but as a commentary on the nature of authorship. No one storyteller should claim to be truly original. Instead, they should aim to innovate within a tradition to which they pay the respects in the act of storytelling. And let's just start with that idea.
Yeah, that's a heavy one, actually.
It is, and it's fun to juxtapose what the previous chapter's author is describing as the references to Tolkien was in fact like Robert Jordan taking Tolkien's notion that the Lord of the Rings happened on Earth historically, right? And he took that as like fact, and then enveloped the entire narrative into his storyline, saying that yes, there was in fact a turning of the wheel with Tom Bombadil, the ring, and all of that, all the orcs, all of that happened at one of the turnings of the wheel, and that's why it is referenced so heavily. And now we're talking about more of like a philosophical referencing of Tolkien as like taking part of a broader landscape of authorship, the art of writing, and how to pay tribute in a way that is meaningful but yet not derivative. So that's what I took from that. What do you guys think about this whole concept?
I think that it's really interesting, especially because Brandon Sanderson got to see Robert Jordan's notes. Because after I read this chapter and I thought about it, I thought about, of course, me being an actor, I always go back to the show. I always wonder that if the fans of the books would have read all of Robert Jordan's notes before Brandon Sanderson wrote these 3 books, would they have liked them?
Oh, interesting. Oh, I like that question.
And I don't know, because, for us, all of us, especially for all the book readers before they saw the show, they had the incredible experience of reading through this entire thing. They were invested. So they had huge expectations of what they were going to see, but they didn't have those for the last 3 books. All they could do was speculate. They had no idea of reference of what things are absolutely supposed to be like, at least in their heads, because they didn't have that. They didn't have the finished work of the story. So whatever they got, within reason, obviously, I think would have been as accepted as whatever they got as what they got, being the last 3 books, The Gathering Storm, Towers of Midnight and Memory of Light.
Yeah. Well, in regards to authorship, he makes a good point, though, as far as so with most of the stories that come from a certain time, we have no idea what the authors are, including the Bible. We don't know a lot of what the author, about their life, about their intent, about a lot of the things that they're doing until we get to a certain point. And then suddenly it becomes very, very important, I think. When you read Kurt Vonnegut, when you read Slaughterhouse-Five, you kind of have to know that he was there at the bombing of Dresden and experienced this. And this was his artistic recreation, autobiographical experience of that. There's certain authors like Bukowski that you're like, oh, you kind of feel the art through the decadence of the man itself. And that's a lot of the reason why, like, I had some trouble with like Russian literature, because I know they were talking about this revolutionary shit that I just didn't have experience in. I didn't grow up in that culture. So when they talked about the Bolsheviks or the bourgeoisie and all these like different things, I mean, Bulgakov was awesome, but I know that 80% of it was over my head. And because the authorship matters to me. However, there's a point where a lot of stuff we like and accept, we don't know shit about the Grimm brothers. We don't know fuck all about the gospel writers. We don't know fuck all about a lot of shit. Who the hell was Don Quixote? Maybe he was the Jeffrey Epstein of his day. We don't fucking know, but we just take the art as it's presented. When you have go ahead, Ryan.
No, I was going to piggyback over that. As I was reading this, the question to my mind came up, and it's funny you brought up Russian authors. I was like, if Dostoevsky, who wrote Crime and Punishment, with his famous novel about Raskolnikov going mad and killing someone with an axe, if he literally himself had committed murder in his lifetime, would I appreciate the book less? Because I know that he was, I guess, a bad person.
Or Lolita.
You know, modern times, this is a very modern new phenomenon where we can just absolutely know so much about the artist behind the works. 20 years ago, pre-internet, you had to maybe find a magazine interview, and then maybe you get to see a picture of the artist behind the painting, behind the play, behind the story, and then maybe you get their thoughts in a very structured way. Nowadays, like your criminal record, you know, if you have a record, it's like all over the fucking
everything.
Anyone can find it, and they judge your work based on your character and your decisions outside of the act of making art. And I've struggled with this because some of my favorite artists are complete dickheads. Kurt Cobain, I would never want to like spend a minute alone with that man.
Yeah,
but like he made like
some
of my favorite.
That's interesting because, you know, when you think of people as artists and what they do when they create something, especially, I mean, it's very different for an actor because actually acting is the only art where you have to have someone else in the room.
Yep.
All of those other things, you can be dickheads. And a lot of dickheads are sitting there in on themselves anyway. But
Absolutely, yeah.
A lot of artists, most art can be done solitary. And some of the greatest writings we're ever going to get are from those types of people, I would imagine. They have way more time to think about what they're putting on paper. And, you know, and we see that. And with those Russian writers, they had a different kind of perspective, especially imagine, you know, and we see this in The Wheel of Time, growing up in a place that doesn't have religion. So these Russian writers, they have that instinct of writing about things without that veil over what they're writing.
So Jansen, when you are reading a script or you're reading something that you need to perform I mean, essentially, it says here, quote, "We must reverse the myth of the birth of the reader must be required by the death of the author." That is, once the reading occurs, the author no longer exists within this
Yes.
relationship. Do you subscribe to that as an actor?
Well, especially in front of the camera or on stage. Now, it's very, very different between theater and especially something like film and television, because a lot of times when you're sitting there, especially for the leads, the writer / author is right there.
Mm-hmm.
So they want to hear their work, how they imagined it. And many, many, many times, most actors put their own spin on it, and it always changes. It's always very different, because those are 2 different minds, 3 different minds. Everything's such a mesh, because you even have other people asking you to do things differently or stand a different way, or it becomes a homogenous part. So many, other than just the writer, especially in acting, it gets way more influence than just creator.
Dad Swin, I mean, we used to have, I mean, even in political writing, all the Federalist Papers were anonymous. That we didn't intentionally know who these came from. And also with the storytelling background, do you think that knowing the author, or do you think that the author does die when the story is told?
I think it's kind of, I'm going to go slightly left field, but like, I think it's more of a modern thing for people to not really understand how, for the general population, let's say, to understand how to approach art, whether it be literature or painting or acting or whatever. And a couple of examples would be that a lot of people read fiction and nonfiction the same way, where they'll read a story and they'll try to understand the author from that story rather than the piece of work itself. And the same way with acting, you'll hear actors talk about this all the time, where they play some sort of lecherous, terrible character, and then they meet people and they're like, "You're an awful person," and they're probably a very delightful person, but the character that they play very well. And the general population sometimes has a hard time interpreting the art itself. They look at that and they're like, "Oh, this must say something about the actor. This must say something about the author." And not everything is autobiographical. You see it in music as well. "Oh, this song must say something about, Katy Perry or whoever." So I think when we're reading The Wheel of Time, and there are certainly points that were made, about how he wrote certain things from a perspective of somebody who had been in a war, or somebody who had experienced, XYZ, and that perhaps that was an influence in the writing. So you might get a little snippet of the author from there, but by and large, what I like about the chapter is it's saying that we have to take authorship. As soon as the art kind of leaves my hand, it belongs to you guys. It belongs to the world, and the world has to interpret that art, not necessarily interpreting me as the artist, but interpreting the art itself to try to figure out what it is trying to say, to you or to everyone or to whomever.
Now, that being said, don't you think, though, as well, there are ways that art, in doing so, could be disrespected? Like, for example, and I guess another Russian writer, I don't know if you're familiar with the writer Elie Wiesel, but he wrote a book called, I think, The Day in the Life of Ivan Denisovich, which was about a guy in a Siberian internment camp, a concentration camp, and his life, one day in his life, and how hard it was and the things that he had to endure. Now, Elie Wiesel was someone who actually endured something like that. And if he passed away mid-writing of a piece like this, you're not going to get someone like Chris Rock to come in and finish it. You know what I mean? So it's like, I believe that with Harriet bringing in Brandon Sanderson, she was doing her best to also honor the work.
Oh, yeah.
Because I mean, if you look at from the very little that I know about that process, but just hearing the way that she had to kind of look at all of the authors who were writing within that genre, or the authors that she knew about anyway, and just trying to say like who sounds like Robert Jordan, or who has a tone, that might be able to, who has a mind that works like this, that may be able to take these characters and take these story arcs and finish it, based, yes, he had notes, yes, he had little bits of insight, but there was a lot of creation that Sanderson had to do on his own to try to fill in all the blanks.
So, wow, that's interesting. What do you think, this is kind of a philosophical question, but what do you think that Harriet used? She had to make herself a casting director for her husband's life's work. And what was her criteria? What was that? Because she had a choice. She didn't have just one person to pick from. And I know she did pick from a fan. So, maybe that, as a basis of someone who had these characters, in their hearts as much as people like us, was a help. But
from what I understand, she was made aware of a touching eulogy that he had published online.
Wow.
Okay. And then she became aware of him, read some of his stuff, and thought that he might be a good fit. This could be wrong. The Twatcast people know much more than me. Jono could correct this next time he's on. But I think that's more or less how it was. He just wrote a really good thing that they showed her, and he was talking about himself as an author and how Robert Jordan had affected his writing and his approach to writing within this homage, and she pursued it as a result, I believe.
Yeah. So he was a published author also at that point. So he had several books out. So I guess she was able to look at his writing, maybe.
Right, but she did not know that he was a writer before that.
Nice.
From what I know.
So then this is bringing back to the article that we're discussing. We've been circling around two of these points. One was the idea of authorship when we have the very notion of an author dying and another author taking over. And he compares this phenomenon with this I'm gonna mess up the names, but there's these bunch of Frenchy names, but there was a poem that was written a long time ago that was famously written by two people, and that has been just grist for debate about who takes credit and what does this all mean. So here it is. It's called The Romance of the Rose. It was written by two people, the first of whom died before his successor took over. Guillaume de Loris wrote his part around 1230, and Jean de Meun probably finished the poem around 50 years later. Jean's section is much longer than the initial segment produced by Guillaume, around 17,000 lines against the original 4,000, and the ideas contained within the two sections differ as much as their style does. As a result, The Romance of the Rose has perpetually fascinated theorists of authorship by asking us to answer not only the question of how we should apportion credit or responsibility for authorship when there is more than one author, but also for how to reconcile apparently conflicting meanings that seem to originate with these multiple authors. So he goes on to talk about how this very phenomenon, Robert Jordan taking on Tolkien's world as inspiration, is the very same thing that Brandon Sanderson ended up doing. True. Taking on the inspiration of Robert Jordan to continue the story. And that was a really fun way to look at that.
It is, but with the Rose, I look at that, being an artist myself, as the only way that should have been handled is the way that Brandon Sanderson himself handled this. And that was by writing a wonderful homage to Robert Jordan right before he told his part of this story. And that would have taken care of that. And that's exactly what that guy should have done with someone else's work especially if it's a contradiction to your own and he's profiting from it.
Yeah, I mean, I agree, Jansen. To a certain degree, it is justifying that if 30 years from now, some fantasy writer decided to have a race or species called Ogier that had long ears and long eyebrows, and just say, well, this is an homage and such, instead of saying, no, you're actually just ripping that off.
Well, I mean, but they could do
but there's been but like, fuck, man, like how far do you take it? Elves were invented by someone.
Yeah, exactly.
Hobbits were invented before. Like these are all borrowed right? Yeah, like if it ends up being an Ogier, like so what is fascinating, both these articles we're reading have discussed this very phenomenon in a very like positive way, saying fuck you guys, like this is not just trite copying. This is an involved decision by an artist who has bigger like goals than just writing a fun story. He's trying to get at bigger shit. And that's what both these authors are trying to like get at in their own way. That like the idea of borrowing from Tolkien, it's not for lack of inspiration, as I read earlier. It's to try and kind of participate in the grander. It reminds me of like when if a jazz soloist gives you a little salt peanut, right? Right. That is participating in the broader conversation of the art form itself. It's not to say, oh, I couldn't think of what to fucking do in my solo, so I just threw in a saltpeena. It's like, no, I'm gonna throw in this saltpeena so tastefully that I'm gonna like whoever originally did it, I forget his name right now, like is gonna like smile in his grave. That's what I think they're trying to get at.
So you're turning the salt peanuts into like an ingredient, like in peanut pad thai, and like it's not only just a little piece, but it's actually like an entire component that just blends into and makes a new dish.
Yeah.
So here is a quote from the book.
I liked it.
We could, I'm just gonna. I think you're on something, but maybe this helps. We could even argue that just as Robert Jordan was using myths from all over the world, including the Matter of Britain, and he goes into that. The Matter of Britain is the whole idea of like constantly referencing Arthurian shit to construct the world and the plot of the Wheel of Time. Sanderson, in turn, was using the Matter of Jordan to write the final 3 volumes of the series. He had a set of characters, locations, magic systems, and plot points given to him, and was tasked with completing the narrative from these ingredients.
Right, and that is entirely appropriate with it because it was Robert Jordan's
and it was
world
sanctioned and all that.
Still. But I mean, if Brandon Sanderson in his own thing had Aes Sedai, well, then that would be weird. We'd have to that would have to be figured out, right? On some sort of cosmic level.
That'd be Sue level, actually.
Yeah,
you could sue over that. But Ogier and Ogre sound way too close.
No, but on purpose, I think these phrases and these terms are meshed up to say that, like, as the characters' names have changed over the turnings of the wheel, like the Owl Thor used to be something, right? Like used to mean something in the
Arthur.
He's trying to say that language is still consistent. This is still the same world, but it's evolving over time. And so I think the similarities are absolutely on purpose to ensconce the original thing in the world. Like last week or 2 weeks ago, the chapter 1 was saying Tolkien's world actually happened. So an ogre, like an ogre, was real. And that word is a relevant, like, in the collective unconsciousness, and it like travels with us and just becomes morphed. That's why there's no direct corollary. That's why we're not looking at names and being like, okay, well, this guy whose name's similar to that, he is the reincarnation of that person. No, that's not the case. It's never a one-to-one. It's more like a blending of language, like over time. And so the similarities are there to make it feel real, but it's not one-to-one relationships. If some author at this point right now starts writing a book and there are Ogiers in it, it better make sense. You can write a book with Ogiers in it, and you're not robbing from Robert Jordan if it makes sense. If you make it make sense in your world, if you make Robert Jordan's world real and relevant to your world that you're writing right now, just like Jordan did to Tolkien,
on the other
right?
side of the book of translation.
Well, I mean, I think we have to, especially with this series, like truly accept the death of the author, because he did die, but also, like, I keep thinking, would he have wanted this? And I don't mean this critically at all, but
did
would he have wanted this?
Did George Lucas want what's happened to Star Wars?
He had a say in its demise, so he can sit on his big golden throne and weep all he wants, but he at least had a say in this.
Yeah.
Well, it also
go ahead.
I think on page 18, it quotes Tom Maryland, and he's kind of saying what we're talking about is he's saying, my epic, if I compose it, will be no more than a seed. Those who know the truth of it will die. So basically saying, if I, Dad Swain, tell you guys a story, then you are here in this moment to hear the origination of this story. And then when we all die, our grandchildren and great-grandchildren may have heard this story, but it's kind of like that game Telephone. Something will switch, one detail will get messed up or whatever. And he was saying, 24 generations, and he's talking, I think, to Egwene. He's like, in 24 generations, Elaine, sorry.
On the boat.
You might be the hero. You might be the dragon. I might be the dragon. I might be somebody who breathes fire or hurls fire like an Aes Sedai. So basically, he's kind of saying, you have this authorship. I think Robert Jordan wrote it that way, this was directly from the books itself. So he kind of knew that, he's going to write the Wheel of Time, and then it's going to be in the ether. It's going to be towards the interpretation of, and this world changes all the time. We were, Guillaume wrote that poem in the 13th century. And so then it took 50 years for another author to finish the poem. And that's a 50-year change in the world. You know what I mean? So we have the Wheel of Time. After we're all gone, our great grandchildren will, interpret the Wheel of Time differently than we do, because they're going to live in the wheel will have turned, and they're going to be living on a different rotation.
Well, so here's an interesting.
Okay. Yeah, go.
No, go on, Dad.
Well, I was going to ask if we are beyond the age where anonymous authorship is a thing anymore. Have we? Everyone is known. Everyone has a Wikipedia page. Everyone is known. I mean, you have to take someone like Thomas Pynchon or J.D. Salinger, someone who was a real recluse and didn't take pictures and stuff like that. But for the most part, you have a history of everyone now. You can know where they grew up, all this stuff. So are we ever going to have a true separation of artist and art when we know everything now?
No.
We'll never be able to close the box that we've opened.
No. And then the question is, are we better off in this modern times versus, right? Like, so I've read, 1,000 books. I only know the story of like 5 authors of all the books I've read. I know shit about these people. and I take the art, I from start to finish, I read it, and does it move me? Does it make me think? Did I enjoy it? Do I like it? Can I critique it as a standalone piece of art? And that's what I've always done. And then all of a sudden now, like just even the fact that I know that Salinger is a hermit, that Pynchon wouldn't take photos. Those are facts that I didn't know about any of the authors I've ever read. And I love reading. And I don't know if we literally benefit at all from this. I don't know, like, the author in this article brings up how this is just, he reminds us that Rosamund Pike loves to think about Robert Jordan being a gunner in Vietnam, and that's how she reads the novels through that lens, and that gives her meaning. But
Yeah, here's the quote, actually, Ryan.
Yeah, go for it.
It says,
Go for it.
When I found out that Robert Jordan had been a helicopter gunner in Vietnam, I thought, oh, that's where this big fantasy world originates. That's why he's so interested in men who had power and abused it and broke the world.
So
that's my
juxtaposed. I love it. So those points are juxtaposed, and so he talks extensively about this person named Barth Simpson. He wrote an essay called "The Death of the Author," and here's a quote about it, and this is fascinating. Robert Barth has argued that a fixation on the author as a source of authority in fixing the meaning of a story was wrong-headed and should die off in order to liberate readers. He claimed that we must reverse the myth. The birth of the reader must be requited by the death of the author. And he was saying that we need to democratize the literature by returning the power to the people, and that we can just look at the art and think about it and analyze it without trying to discern the initial intent. Like, what does it mean for us? What does it mean for our lived experience? Blah, blah. So yeah, 50 years from now, like, someone's going to read the Wheel of Time. They might know, oh, he was a gunner in the Vietnam War. They'd have to fucking Wikipedia the Vietnam War. What the fuck was that? Like, none of that is even meaningful in terms of, does that story, is there a timeless, there's all these offshoots of my thoughts, but like, if its story is timeless, none of that shit matters.
Yeah.
Who or what?
I mean, it sounds also a little bit, and this is me being cynical, but it also sounds a little bit to me like what a Nazi would try to say selling children's books. If you know what I mean. Hey, I know I did that shit, but these are good books. Like,
Yeah, what the fuck? What the fuck?
Like, there is, I'm afraid, because I do agree with them, but I'm also afraid that, and thank God this is fiction, because I'm afraid that you take away some of the responsibility of something that you might create. Of some,
Sure.
It's like, say our president writes a book about people and doesn't publish it, but somebody else does it for him. Now, the president that we know, that we all know and love,
your favorite,
I love knowing him,
would take no responsibility for that.
Well, Robert Jordan is famous for saying, "I am an Old Testament God in regards to these people. I created them, and I will destroy them if I want." He was a control. He was in control of everything, and so the idea of someone taking over, like, I'm sure he had these conversations. I'm sure he said, "Here's my notes," but it's also, wow, like, that's a hard choice to make. That's like harder than writing your will and stuff. Is like, all right, you are going to finish my life's work. Is amazing.
Well, you guys are musicians. I've been a musician before. And there's always that one thing in the back of every musician's head is, what if I got so many people to hear me that I became mainstream? Would I change? Would I be different? Because is my music mine now, is there everybody's now?
Yep.
What would happen? And, for better or worse, Robert Jordan created something that a lot of people liked. And when you have that much gas in a bottle, it won't stay closed. It will pop.
Mhm.
And obviously his estate wants to benefit from his life's work and has tried.
Yep.
Like, make no qualms about the fact that they have tried to sell this more than once.
Right.
Mhm.
They have tried to profit from this work. So it's so for me, the anger that people have or the angst that people have for someone taking over and or adding to this or changing things, it's Cry Me a River to me. Because it's like I do, however, believe now that the show should have never been what it was.
Mhm.
I believe the show should have been a prequel.
Yep.
Because we're going over the exact same thing that we're talking about. People had an expectation already. If you had a prequel, you could have been as creative as you wanted to,
Mhm.
knowing, especially the fans, knowing what was to come.
Yeah.
Oh, that's how they did that, and it would have gotten a way better response.
That's
yeah,
funny.
And then you could
mentioned that.
take all the creative license that you want, just
Yep.
as long as you hit these certain little beats.
Yeah.
Because it's wide open.
Wide
Mhm.
open. Mistakes.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, and that relates to this Sanderson quote that he presents to us, talking
I
about
love this awareness.
trying to complete the series, and how there are some people who loved what Sanderson did, some people who don't like it.
Mhm.
But here he's talking about his take on Matt, which is polarizing, right? He says, "My take on Matt was very divisive among the Wheel-Time fans. A great number feel I did him poorly in The Gathering Storm. I've had a similar number approach me and tell me they like my Matt better than they did in previous books. Unfortunately, in doing so, these latter readers prove that the first readers are right. People do not come to me and say, I like your Perrin or I dislike your Perrin. They do not do it for Rand, Egwene, or any of the other major characters. While undoubtedly there are some who feel this way about those characters, there is not a consensus opinion among a large number of fans as there is that Matt was different in The Gathering Storm." And he's basically owning up to that, like, that's a failure. And I think I've heard him say other ways that he felt like he fucked up Matt. And so just the fact that it's different was enough for the people to like take sides and like give him this and that, which is exactly what happened to the show. It's so different that people start taking sides. I like it better than this.
Pardon me. I'm so sorry.
It's all right.
It's interesting. I always, ever since I started reading this book, I focus on the way that Brigitte was talking to Elaine in one chapter, and I think they were discussing the fact that an accepted. It was when she was ripped out of Teleron Road and Elaine bonded her, and then she was kind of like, "I can feel you," and she said, "I bonded you, and also I'm an accepted." So Brigitte starts telling her about. I think I remember this one accepted back in 20 lifetimes ago, and she did the same thing except they caught her. They took her water away, blah blah blah, and then whatever. And then Elaine is like, "That sounds really familiar."
Aslan and Atalan.
Yeah, and then she's like, "Wait, the way I know this story is absolutely different than the way that Brigitte lived it." And so, as just a source of fascination, that like the way that you were talking about, like even the Bible, not to poo on Christians or anything, but like this is thousands of years ago from people that we don't even have any sort of information about. And so I wonder, like over the centuries, or the millennia in this case, how the stories have been preserved and how they've sort of veered off in some creative, wonderful way. Because both stories, Elaine's version and Brigitte's version, were awesome. They each had a sort of fascination that Elaine remembered the story, and then Brigitte, of course, lived it. But So the same with like the Wheel of Time. You know, this story is going to continue, and then generations from now, somebody's going to, the world's going to change, and then people are going to look at it, and we don't even know. I think the point I was making was I used to get really angry because I'm from, I guess we all are sort of this generation of people who really loved tactile, books, and now we're in a technological age where people are like, I haven't even touched a book, but my Kindle is like, overflowing with books, or I have audiobooks, out my ass or whatever.
I got Alexandria's library on my Kindle.
Yeah. And it's like, that's just the way that people interpret, literature now, and the way that they absorb literature now. And so I kind of had to adjust my thinking to realize that they're going to get something different. But the story is going to be meaningful to them, just as this, tactile experience is meaningful to me.
Right. And that's when, to your point, how many songs did Matt recognize but were called something else 500 years earlier?
Land too.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what I wouldn't give for a copy of the 3 final books that had notes from Sanderson written in here and had a different color font for things that Jordan actually wrote.
You don't, because if it did, after you read them all, the first thing you'd say is, I wish I didn't read that.
Oh man, I want that so badly. I want to know what. So, and this article makes a great point in regards to Androl, right? Androl, a lot of fans apparently are a little bit upset by the creation of Androl and think that he stole the glory, the thunder, and pretty much everything else that should have been Logain's. We don't know what Jordan had in store for Androl. Androl had a minor voiced part in Winter's Heart, and that's it. Until Sanderson got his hands on him.
Robert Jordan creation,
yeah.
Sure. As was Bella, as was Pips. I mean, so yeah, it was a named thing, but suddenly
you compared Androl to 2 horses.
Well, maybe, because so as was any random Ashaman kind of thing. But so I really want to know, like, what if Jordan had any plans for Androl, if it was entirely Sanderson. And like, these things are interesting to me.
It's interesting, but it's also a very slippery slope, because you got to remember who also edited and okayed this. And the person who did that was the same person who this entire life's work was dedicated to.
Yeah.
So that's a very, for her to greenlight this work, she had to be okay with it and think it was good. She wouldn't have put this out there if she thought it was bad or a failure or anything. If anything less than perfect, she wouldn't have put it out there. At least in her eyes. And we are talking about the person who was closest to this work other than the author himself.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Like, lover, wife.
Yeah.
Editor.
It's interesting because it kind of brings up a philosophical question of, when you have a poem like the poem we were talking about from the 13th century, or a piece of work like this one that's written by an author who passes away and is picked up by another author. I think in our minds, we look at it as 2 separate pieces of literature. And instead of looking at it as one complete piece of literature with maybe 2 voices. And I know that I did that. I mean, I can clearly see in my mind the last 3 books as this sort of floating entity versus the first, which is on a shelf somewhere as one single entity. And it's hard to adjunct
so
that.
I'm so happy that I have been on television for so long, because there's so many shows that have a million writers about it. And I don't think about that at all that way.
Mm-hmm.
I do see it as one big entity.
Mm-hmm.
Well, let's bring that to the Wheel of Time then. Would we be better off if this whole thing had been published like the Federalist Papers and we were reading works from Pluribus or whoever and didn't know the authorship and we got the complete story, the Wheel of Time by fuck you, who cares?
Oh, I guarantee you it would have been very different. Of course.
Mm-hmm.
Or how about this question?
Well, no, the same book. We just don't know that he died.
Yeah, it would have been. We would have gotten a very different response because, one, people miss him. They hold him to their hearts, and anything less, there was no one they could have thought that would have met their expectations.
Yes.
Hey, like and subscribe, East Boston.
Yeah,
East
baby.
Boston.
Let's go.
East Boston.
Why do you think
where
I'm
they dumped
here?
the T? I think was East Boston. I love you. So yeah, I mean, so if we had no idea there was a switch, would it be obvious to us?
It'd be obvious.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like
I think there'd be like the moment. Yeah, because you still have threads of Robert Jordan in there, obviously, in his notes or the things that he wrote or whatever that were included in there. But then you have a definite tonal shift when Sanderson takes over that's recognizable.
Yeah,
Dan,
remember?
But that being said, so let's put it at another perspective. Say that you read the whole books, all of them from start to finish, and I told you 3 authors wrote it. You'd believe me.
Uh-huh.
Because
I can hear that.
They were definitely different characters from The Eye of the World, and they were definitely written differently from The Eye of the World until, say, Towers of Midnight, or not even Lord of Chaos.
Just a slog.
If we had attached Brandon Sanderson's name only to New Spring,
what
would let's just say it was entirely written by Robert Jordan. It just had, like the last 3 books, it had Brandon Sanderson on there as well.
So this reminds me of something like an analogy, like what you're bringing up.
Would we be reading into stuff and being like, oh, this is Sanderson doing shit?
3 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, I had some very, very, very expensive wine that was supposed to be $1,500 a bottle.
Yes, God.
And I opened up 3 of them and started pouring them. And one woman came up to me and said, "This is the best I've ever had. This is the best." She was telling her friend, "This is amazing. This is the best. This is the best." So she had a couple sips, and then she came back like a couple hours later, and that wine was gone. And I didn't have the heart to tell her, so I gave her some crap.
Josh
took it. Just amazing. Have you had some of that? And
some friends, yeah.
Yeah, she was at a very wealthy person's house, eating very wealthy food and drinking very wealthy drinks, and whatever she had was the best to her. So, it's all what people perceive. I do believe if we didn't know that Brandon Sanderson wrote the last 3 and everyone read them all, that people would see some differences, but there wouldn't be an eruption.
They wouldn't think it was an entirely different person, would they?
No, they wouldn't. They wouldn't.
That's my point. And Jansen, that's a really good analogy that you put up. Yeah, we would think it's just a difference in wine now. Oh shit! Look what he's doing now. Oh, he's pulling out Andrew. Oh look. Oh, Matt's funny.
Well, we would definitely notice it though, Dan. Remember reading the Game of Thrones, like when all of a sudden George R. Martin starts like using nuncle, nipples on a breastplate, Sarah, like all of a sudden these new terms came out, and we noticed them instantly. We'd call each other, like, "What the fuck's up with nuncle? Where's this nuncle coming from?"
Hey,
right? Like we would definitely notice a literal change in author. Like it
But
would,
we didn't think
if
that George R. R. Martin was suddenly someone else because he started using Nuncle.
I don't know. So Dan, what point are you making? Like I'm getting confused. What point are you making?
I'm saying that Jansen is like, I'm wondering if we did not know explicitly that there was another author, we would just think that Robert Jordan was maybe just doing his Nuncle thing now. And then he's doing his nipples on a breastplate thing instead of thinking, oh, this is Sanderson doing his thing.
No, yeah, the original thought was that if what was the original thought? Oh, the original thought was how we as readers and people who, just anyone interpreting art, if the art was done by two authors, that we kind of fixate on when one stopped and when one begins, instead of seeing it as a completed work of art. And that's what provoked this conversation.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Which is fascinating. And like it is, a lot of this has to take into account like our understanding of how we picture the artist working. Like we have a mental image of an author, a lonely author sitting grinding at a keyboard. Right. Mm-hmm. And then and we also have like the painter alone, mm-hmm. painting on the canvas. It's just that person in the canvas, what's going to come out. And that's a special, like, I believe in that. I honor that. The people who do that, I feel, are brave. They're going like psychologically, like like that's hard for me to work by myself like that. I like to work in groups. Mm-hmm. But like so much of the art that we appreciate in modern times that's gone out the window. Any pop song is got, if you look at the authorship of a pop song, there's 12 fucking people like mm-hmm. per song, and they're all divvying up royalties, and who knows how like the breakdown is, but we don't look at that and be like, okay, well, who came up with the bass line, who came up, or like, who started the song first and where did it go? It's just like they all take credit and they all like move on with their lives. I think it's kind of, I've never liked that. I still honor like the Bob Dylan sitting there working out a song on his couch on a guitar, that type of thing. And I honor the author just writing by himself. And I remember being very challenged by the idea that Robert Jordan died and this dude was going to fucking take over his writing. Mm-hmm. I didn't read any of Sanderson until after I read the book. Like I was like, oh, this fucker, he better fucking. And then I was eventually like happy and like I felt, grateful that he did it, but mm-hmm. I want to put this question out to you. What if Robert Jordan dies and all we got after that was his notes in a book? So there was like 11 books and then boom, here's all of his notes, maybe like audio recordings, all that shit that Sanderson got. But what if that's what we got and we never finished the book, but we got the notes?
The show would have done a lot better. For sure.
I mean, I've questioned that. Like, would it be as famous a series if that's how it ended? Was Sanderson necessary for it to be so popular that we are all recommending it? If he died and it didn't get finished, would we be like telling our friends, "Hey, read this series"?
I would say no.
Finishes? Yeah,
I'd say no.
I think it'd be the same. Mm-hmm. I think it'd be the same. And in fact, the more speculation that you have on something like this, I mean, even though we did get to see a conclusion, how many shows have we had talking about what comes next? Mm-hmm. They would have had just as many, and we would have had just as many talking about what happened, what really happened, and using his notes, no less. So,
yeah, maybe even, yeah, shoot, that's a fucking great point. Like, we talk about this all the time. Like, when we started this channel, like, a lot of it was based on what Dan and I viewed when the Game of Thrones became big. Like, all these little YouTubers were just like sitting around talking about Game of Thrones, and as the show got bigger, all of a sudden these people like were quitting their jobs and just doing Game of Thrones content because And so I was like, that sounds fun. Let's try that, Dan. Why not? Let's throw our hat in the ring. But in essence, because it is a completed story, that like style of speculation, it's not available.
It's gone.
It's gone. Yeah, it's all wrapped up. There's something we could do fourth age shit, but
he did give us the ages and the wheel. Yeah. So there's a ton of speculation. And weirdly enough, I thought about this. You know what else Robert Jordan gave us?
Okay.
He gave us a theory because it can't be disproved.
I'll work.
All right. Wait. Do we wait for the money first, or do we do it and then expect? Yeah,
Atlanta they're gonna be like, "Good job, guys."
Okay.
And then
I think the question is, who does he really want to see twerking? All right. No, we got a lot of funny people. Hey, everyone who's new, I love the commentary. You guys all suck ass. Be cool. Go to school.
Yep.
We are awesome. Atlanta, man, we're awesome.
That's
we're
right.
Awesome.
That wet ass pussy. I like to rub your face on this.
On that note, guys.
Macaroni in a pot.
Yeah, Jansen's like, he's gonna Kramer and bounce.
Right, really.
But I thought this was a great show, guys. I think we're bringing up some things we've never talked about this and looking at it in a totally different way, which I am really.
Yes.
This has been a lot of fun. I can't wait to talk about chapter 3.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, bitchin', man.
I agree. We will discuss chapter 3 next Sunday. Hopefully, Beanie Josh will be with us.
Mm-hmm.
Jansen, you have anything to promote before you leave?
I do not. I have been hardcore on pilot season and auditioning and just going at it, man. Puppies are incredibly difficult, so I'm trying to train these two with my family, and it's been great. And I love this community. I can't wait to see you guys next week.
Aww.
All right, I agree. Bro. This community loves
you. Have a great Sunday.
You're a diamond in the rough, Jansen.
Sure. Thanks.
And that's
all
when
right.
You have yourself a rock star week. I want to hear some awesome stories.
Yes,
and
absolutely.
Good job with the job. Good job with everything.
That's a blessing, man.
That is a blessing, absolutely. Thank you.
We'll be back next week talking about Wheel of Time and Philosophy. We're going to go into the 3rd chapter, which is called We Call Ourselves Gleeman Because a Silly Name Makes Us Less Frightening, artist, marginality, and epistemic privilege. Nice. Thanks, Tracy Phillipson. So, we're going to dig into that next week. Thanks for all the new people that stopped in. I hope you didn't just come in to drop weird homophobic comments. I hope you also learned something or whatever. Whatever. I love you all. I'm proud of you all. Go have a good day. Go use your blinker when you drive. Be good drivers, man.
All right, run for your lives. This is the way to leave.
Hello!